Greetings, Lumen students. It is week 14 and this is your Tuesday video. We're going to focus on history today. We're continuing our medieval times studies. We have talked about the different jobs that people may have had in this feudal system where a majority of people were peasants and had difficult lives. The next tier up maybe would be knights, nobles, monks, those members of the authorities in the church, the Catholic Church at the time, and then finally the king at the top of this feudal system. I am wearing 2 clues of a job that you might have had in the medieval time period, and then I want to share with you 3 other jobs. We talked about the 3-field system last time, and I want to share with you the story of Will, the plowboy, and what his life was like working the land. Wheat, barley, and fallow. That's what my father taught me. If you got 3 fields, you sow wheat in October and barley in March, and you let the 3rd field rest. I don't know why the fields have the right to rest when people don't. I only know that that's what he told me. My father's been dead for 4 years now, but I think of him every day. I used to lead the ox when he plowed. We'd finish the field on the north side of the village and cross to the west, but that was a long walk, and so he'd let me ride the ox. Then the Lord gave us a strip in the low field, and that was so far, it took half the day to get there, and I couldn't keep up. Neither could my father. There was so much walking between the fields, and the strips of land were so small, our harvest wasn't worth a rotten apple. And then there was the work he had to do in the Lord's fields, the work he was paid to do. Every day he'd bring home 3 herrings and a loaf of bread, but sometimes the herrings had been dead so long we couldn't eat them. One night he came home late, and my mother ran out and put her arms around him and heard her say, What's that?" And he put his hand over her mouth and let her inside. And under his smock he had a hare, almost as big as a fox, still warm. He killed it with a stone. My mother cried and said that he'd be hanged, but he told her to clean the hare for supper. So we had fresh rabbit meat, and I ate so much I was sick in the night. He said I couldn't tell anyone, not ever, because that hare belonged to the Lord, and we had no right to eat it. I never did tell, and no one found out. And when he lay dying, he told me to work hard and take care of my mother and sisters, and I promised I would, even if I died of working. I always did everything he told me, and I always will, as long as I live. So the life of a farmer in the medieval times was not a great life either. Can you imagine all the game that lived in the woods surrounding the land belonged to the Lord, and they weren't allowed to shoot it or eat it or take it. They had to just work in the Lord's fields, and then he'd pay them with some food. 1 loaf of bread and 3 dead stinky fish. And that was what he was supposed to use to feed his family all the time. And then his own crops, and because the Lord could control where the land was, and how big those pieces were, that was really, really hard to be a farmer. Well, since it's Christmas time, and I have a short video clip just for fun related to each of the careers that I'm going to tell you about today. Again, I hope you're looking for the 2 clues that I'm wearing of another type of career that you could have. All right, let's watch this one about a farming family.
Okay, maybe you're alone in life, but other people wonder about farms, is what I mean. Well, then this story is for you. Mr. Smith was a farmer because he liked having lots of furry little friends and then killing them and eating them. His wife, Mrs. Smith, had only an 8th grade education, which wasn't much good since she didn't do grades 1 through 7. But she owned her own pitchfork, so yep. The Smiths lived in Nebraska, on purpose. They also had 2 kids, not on purpose. Johnny Smith was once a good boy, but he became a teenager and got into some weird stuff, like puberty. Now he and his friends hang out behind the school, squeaking their voices and doing acting. Martha May was a girl. Together, they all lived on the Smith farm, which Grandpa Smith had bought. Grandpa Smith died, 'cause that's also what bought the farm means. But the farm life was a happy one, and so things went until one day, things changed.
Barnaby, you trying to steal my farm again?
Not necessarily.
Okay, come in.
Barnaby and Mr. Smith had been brothers ever since they were kids. But when Mr. Smith turned farmer, Barnaby became a pharmacist, 'cause he thought that those were the same thing. So Mr. Smith got the farm, much to Barnaby's chagrin.
Am I in time for supper?
Indeed you are. Martha May Smith, Johnny Smith, supper time.
Johnny didn't have a middle name, 'cause they couldn't afford one, and if he did, he would have sold it for deodorant money. He had a problem.
Uncle Barnaby, I can't shake the feeling that you're trying to steal the farm.
Maybe because that's what he does literally every time.
Said Martha May, the girl.
Well, to make you all feel better, let's drink a toast. Except I ain't thirsty, so just you are.
He poured from a special flask.
All right now, drink up.
They tried to drink, but the liquid had melted their cups.
Time for plan B.
What did you say?
I said, time for plan C.
Oh, okay.
After dinner, they all went to bed, except Johnny snuck out back to shave his upper lip. That night, Grandpa Smith came to Mr. Smith in a dream.
Your evil brother Barnaby.
Why?
Because he's going to steal the farm, you nincompoop.
This was news to Mr. Smith, just like it was every time.
He wants to tear out the corn and plant prescription meds. Because he thinks a pharmacist is a farmer.
Well, what do I do?
When he make a bunch of hotcakes. Oh! Oh!
Dream Grandpa died suddenly, and Mr. Smith woke up in a cold sweat. It was Mrs. Smith's sweat.
Hey, sweetie.
He couldn't help thinking Barnaby was after the farm, or something. He was nervous the whole morning. Nervous when he read the paper. Nervous when he cooked breakfast. Nervous when he signed away the deed to the land.
Dang it!
Papa, you done lost the farm. We've been swindled.
I'ma take this farm and grow some prescription drugs. Ritalin, Adderall, Benadryl. Oh, make a fortune.
Farmers ain't supposed to make money.
You get, brother. About time y'all left Nebraska.
They loved Nebraska for lots of reasons.
Everyone,
But the biggest one was bad judgment.
get that deed.
No, sir.
Barnaby started throwing rocks. The first rock killed Grandpa again. The second rock hit Johnny, who was experimenting with growth spurts. The third rock was actually the deed. And so the Smiths were saved by Deus Ex Machina. And they lived happily ever after. Unless this video is popular on YouTube, then they'll have more problems in a sequel. The end.
Like Studio C, and even though that was just for fun, it did illustrate some of the points that we've been talking about with the medieval times, that farmers had a hard lot, and that they were being controlled by the lords who didn't always have their best interests at heart. Let's talk about another job that you could have during the medieval time period, and this is the glassblower's apprentice. His name is Piers. Maybe you have seen glass blowing demonstrated before. I'm going to show you a video, some modern glass blowing techniques. But I want you to think about the challenges that were faced by the glass blowers during the medieval time periods. Okay, so they would have an apprentice who would learn their task, and their job was to help out the glass blower. And one of their jobs was to pump the bellows. If you've ever seen something that looks kind of like an accordion, and its purpose is to blow air at the fire to increase the heat in the fire and to make it burn even hotter. So he would pump the bellows to get the fire going, and he's hoping for a chance to learn how to blow the glass himself. Listen to Piers, the glass blower's apprentice. After 3 years of pumping the bellows and stoking the furnace, I said to the master, "When do I learn to blow glass?" He stared at me with his one blue eye. The other was burned in a workshop fire. There was a red seam down his face where the eye melted shut. Once I was afraid of him, but not now. "When I choose to teach you," that was all he said. For the rest of the week, I was peevish and slothful. He knew I was wroth, and once he said, "You won't find it easy. It's harder than it looks." But then he said, "Now." And I blinked, bone stupid. "What now?" "You wanted the chance to blow glass? Now try it." So I did. I watched him 1,000 times. I took the iron pipe and I held it in the fire till it glowed red hot. My hand, my left hand, nearest the fire, throbbed with the heat, and I felt the sweat run down my chest. I gathered the glass white hot and glowing, and I put the pipe in my mouth and blew, but it didn't work. The glass was stiff and it wouldn't swell. I put my thumb on the mouth of the pipe, sucked air, blew out, and all this while the glass was getting colder, duller, orange, blood red, mud red, black. I didn't dare look at him, that one-eyed stare, but his voice was kind again. I took the pipe, I gathered the glass, I sweated, I blew, my cheeks puffed out, the iron pipe banged my teeth. I blew like the angel Gabriel sounding the horn for Judgment Day, and I felt the bubble start to form. I trapped the air, I plugged the pipe, I rolled the glass, I twirled it on the marble slab, and now my right hand burned and ached. The glass was off, lopsided. I didn't dare to lift my head, the glass was ruined, but he said, "Well done. Oh, St. Luke, please help me try again and keep my master well. Amen." Well, Piers is certainly excited about having this job and excited about learning how to do it. Doesn't have a lot of success. His master has had difficulty. His face has been burned in an accident. One eye melted shut. That doesn't sound too awesome to me. But let's look at this video that demonstrates how it happens in modern day times. I think you'll notice some of the steps are similar without all the fancy equipment. So let's look at this one.
Welcome to Live, Laugh, Love Glass, where the magic of glass blowing happens. Let me explain a little bit about our hot shop. The first important tool in our hot shop is our furnace. Our furnace holds over 300 pounds of clear molten glass and is kept at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than lava. The second most important tool in our hot shop is the glory hole. We use the glory hole to reheat the glass every few minutes to keep the piece moldable. The glory hole is also hot enough to melt your marshmallow. The last major piece of equipment is the annealer, which holds the pieces while they cool. It's kept at 950 degrees Fahrenheit until the last piece is inside, then the temperature is gradually lowered to prevent pieces from cooling too quickly and cracking. Alright, let's make a masterpiece. First, use a blowpipe to gather some glass from the furnace. Gathering glass requires continuous rotation of your steel rod in the furnace in order to gather the glass steadily and evenly. We then cool the rod down a little bit using some water. Smells like bacon. Once the glass is stable, we carry it to a steel table called a marver and begin shaping it. The marver will absorb a lot of heat from the molten glass because the surfaces of the two materials touch. We continually flash the entire piece in the glory hole while working on it to prevent it from cracking. Next, we create marbling by twisting the piece with tweezers. It blends and creates movement within the glass. Creating a bubble in the glass is done by blowing into the pipe, then covering the hole with our thumb. Heat will cause the trapped air inside the blowpipe to expand, which in turn will create a small bubble at the end of the pipe. After any additional gathering, we immediately put our glass in the colored frit on the marver table to add color to our piece. Once the color is applied, we use a device known as the wood block to shape our piece. The marver can also be used for additional shaping. The next step is expanding the glass bubble. We do this by attaching a blow hose to the blowpipe and blow air gently through the pipe while we shape the glass with a combination of newspaper and wooden blocks. Using a wooden paddle, we tap the pipe forcefully, causing the piece to break off the end of the pipe. And that is how watermelons are made.
Sorry for that odd cap photo at the end, but I thought that was very interesting to learn about glass blowing techniques in modern times. So the third career that I want to talk to you about has titled Falconer. And we're going to read about Edgar, the falconer's son. Training birds, birds of prey, was also an occupation that someone could have in the Middle Ages. The Lord would want to carry a falcon or a hawk with him hunting. So let me just read with you a little background about that. Falconry or hawking was one of the most popular sports of the Middle Ages. Though hawking had a practical purpose, obtaining meat for the table, this was perhaps less important than the excitement and prestige the sport provided. Large birds of prey were status symbols because they were so expensive. It took time and infinite patience to train a bird for hunting. A falconer like Edgar's father was better paid and of higher social status than a groom or a varlet. The gear associated with hunting birds was artfully made. A bird would require a carefully crafted leather hood, jesses, those were strips of leather attached to their talons, their claws, and a leash which tethered the bird to its perch. A well-trained falcon might be worth her weight in gold. I say her because female birds were larger and stronger than male birds. When a falconer fed his bird, he stroked her with one of her own feathers, often accompanying the feeding and stroking with a scrap of melody. Always the same song, and this was part of the taming process. So Edgar has gotten attached to a little sparrowhawk, and there has been a problem because Master Simon, we had read about him previously, has to go off to the monastery. He wanted to become a knight, you remember, but there isn't any money left, and so instead he has to go become a monk. And so the birds are going to be going, the bird will be going with Master Simon, and Edgar is not happy about it. So listen to what Edgar says and what he's going to do. Listen now, my sparrowhawk, the stars are fading. Soon the bell for prime will ring. I'll raise thy hood, untie thy leash, and fare thee well. The mews are all but empty now, the great birds auctioned one by one. Only one single sparrowhawk is left, the one tamed by the falconer's son. And that's thyself. Master Simon's off to be a monk, and thou must ride on his fist to St. John's Abbey. Save that I will free thee now. I will not leave thee to his care. I know young Simon, and I know thee. I'll loose thy jesses, I'll cast thee off, even though they punish me. 'Twas I who stole thee 2 years hence, climbed to the heights with many a qualm, scooped thee from thy mother's nest, and I felt thy heart against my palm. I was the one who filled thy crop. I fed thee, stroked thee day and night. Thou was my captive and my child, all savageness and appetite. It was I who gentled thee. I was the one who drew the thread that sealed thy eyelids. And for thee I hungered and forsook my bed. Long in the night I walked the floor, carrying thee upon my glove. I fed thee dainties, mice and eels, adder skin and heart of dove. But now the manor's bankrupt, failed, and the master's hawking days are done. The mews are empty, save for thee, property of the master's son. But Simon will not tend to thee. He would let thee starve and pine. Callow, shallow, pampered youth. But by law of justice thou art mine. And being mine at break of day, the hour comes for us to part. I'll loose thee, splendid, come what may, even though it break my heart. Neither of us will shed a tear. The moment when I set thee free, the valor taught me scorn for fear. What care I what they do to me? So Edgar's going to release this little sparrowhawk rather than let him go with Simon, the Lord's son. He says, Simon won't take care of him, and I've trained you, I've cared for you so long. Wasn't it interesting to learn about how he climbed up in the mountains, or maybe he climbed into a tree, scooping him from his mother's nest. And he trained him. One of the parts of training them is that the bird's eyelids were sewn shut. And that was said to calm the bird down. It's part of the training process. And then they'd unsew them and cut the threads that kept their eyes closed later in the training process. And he said he fed him mice and eels and other things, even in the middle of the night, kind of to keep him happy and work on the training process. Well, letting him go is a crime, but Edgar is hoping that the punishment for setting Simon's hawk free will not be more than he can spare. Though he claims that by justice the bird is his, by the law of the land it belongs to Simon's father, since it was captured on his land. Because tamed birds were so valuable, the penalty for stealing one, which is really what Edgar is doing by letting him go, could be imprisonment or mutilation. Okay? Maybe he'd have a hand cut off, an eye poked out. Terrible, terrible punishments. But in this particular case, the bird is of little value, so Edgar may be lucky enough to get off with just a severe whipping. And he decides that that is worth it to let the bird go. All right, I have a bird video for you as well. This is a trained bird, not trained in the way that a hawk or a falcon would be, but pretty fun nonetheless. Let's look at this one.
What if you could unplug your messy old child?
Sorry, I'll wait till we can skip the ad. Apologize for that.
I'm going to let her introduce herself to everybody. Can you tell everybody your name? Can you tell everyone hi? Hello. That's nice. Can you be polite? Sweetheart. Much better. Well, Einstein is very honored to be here at TED 2006 amongst all you modern day Einsteins. In fact, she's very excited. Yeah. Since we've arrived, there's been a constant buzz about all the exciting speakers here for the conference. This morning, we've heard a lot of whispers about Tom O'Reilly's wrap-up on Saturday. Einstein, did you hear whispers? Yeah. Einstein's especially interested in Penelope's talk. A lot of her research goes on in caves, which can get pretty dusty. Yeah, it could make her sneeze. But more importantly, her research could help Einstein find a cure for her never-ending scratchy throat. Yeah. Well, Bob Russell was telling us about his work on nanotubes and his research at the microscopic level. Well, that's really cool, but what Einstein's really hoping is that maybe he'll genetically engineer a 5-pound peanut. Yeah, she would get really, really excited. That is one big peanut. Since Einstein is a bird, she's very interested in things that fly. She thinks Bert Rutan is very impressive. Oh. Yeah. She especially likes his latest achievement, Spaceship One. Einstein, would you like to ride in Bert's spaceship? Even if it doesn't have a laser? Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty funny, Einstein. Now, Einstein also thinks, working in caves and traveling through space, it's all very dangerous jobs. It would be very dangerous if you fell down. Yeah. A little splat, I think. Einstein, did that hurt? Ow, ow, ow. Yeah, it's all a lot of hard work. Yeah, it can get a bird like Einstein frustrated. Sure can. But when Einstein needs to relax from her job educating the public, she loves to take in the arts. If the children of the Uganda need another dance partner, Einstein could sure fit the bill because she loves to dance. Can you get down? Let's get down for everybody. Come on now. She's going to make me do it too. Ooh, 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 ooh. Do your head now. All right. Or maybe Serena Wong would like to learn some arias on her violin, and Einstein could sing along with some opera. Very good. Or maybe Stu just needs another backup singer. Einstein, can you also sing? I know you need to get rid of that seed first. Can you sing? There you go. And of course, if all else fails, she can just run off and enjoy a fun fiesta. All right. Well, Einstein was pretty embarrassed to admit this earlier, but she was telling me backstage that she had a problem.
What's the matter?
No, I don't have the problem. You have the problem. Remember, you were saying that you were really embarrassed because you're in love with a pirate. There you go. And what do pirates like to drink?
Beer.
Yeah, that's right. But you don't like to drink beer, Einstein. You like to drink water. Very good. Now, really, she is pretty nervous because one of her favorite folks from back home is here, and she's pretty nervous to meet him. She thinks Al Gore is a really good-looking man. What do you say, the good-looking man? And so do all the folks back home in Tennessee. And since she's such a big fan, she knows that his birthday is coming up at the end of March, and we didn't think he'd be in town then, so Einstein wanted to do something special for him. So let's see if Einstein will sing Happy Birthday to Al Gore. Can you sing Happy Birthday to him? Again. Again. Big finish. Good job. Well, before we wrap it up, she would like to give a shout out to all her animal friends back at the Knoxville Zoo. Einstein, do you want to say hi to all the owls? What about the other birds? The penguin? There we go. Let's get that one out of there. How about a chimpanzee? Very good. What about a wolf? And a pig? And the rooster? And how about those cats? At the zoo, we have big cats from the jungle. What about a skunk? She's a comedian. I suppose you think you're famous. Are you famous? Superstar. Yeah, you are a superstar. Well, we'd like to encourage all of you to do your part to help protect Einstein's animal friends and to do your part to help protect their homes that they live. Now, Einstein does say it best when we ask her, why do we want to protect your home?
I'm special.
You are very special. What would you like to say to all these nice people?
I love you.
That's good. Can you blow them a kiss? And what do you say when it's time to go?
Bye.
Good job. Thank you all.
That's a pretty impressive bit of bird training, do you think? I thought that was awesome. I want to read the last medieval job that I have for you, and it relates to what I'm wearing, so see if you can determine what this girl does. Okay, she's learned from her father. Her name is Taggart. She's going to talk about a holiday during medieval time periods that was called May Day. And I don't know if you've heard about May Day. May 1st isn't really a big celebration for us. Sometimes we talk about maypoles and dancing around the maypole. Well, this was when it originated during the medieval time period. People would celebrate it by gathering flowers, by dancing, by flirting, and playing games. Often this is when courtship happened and marriage proposals would be given. Young couples would meet on May Day and then get married. Taggets discouraged because she didn't go to the May Day celebration, and she's going to explain why. But then she meets someone that we know. It's been a little while since we've read about him, so pay attention to what happens to Taggett. See if you can learn what her job was, and if you haven't yet, try to identify when I'm wearing that signals her job. 9 days it's been since the Maying, and I'm restless yet. Mother hasn't seen it, nor Father, nor Robin. Only the horses know. It was May Day, and the others, even Father and Mother at their age, set off for the woods, wanting bluebells and cowslips and kissing under the trees. I used to go when I was little. I liked to pick flowers and peek, but I'm older now. All my friends have sweethearts, but there's no one for me, and I know why. I'm too big. Father says his father was a giant of man, and somehow his size came down to me. And there's something else. I've stared into the round pool, and it's hard to tell, for the water is never still. But I think I'm ugly, big and ugly, and shy in the bargain. Mother says I'm likely not to marry at all. When it's a world of trouble you'll save yourself, says Mother. Child-bearing and child-dying. And no doubt she's right. I always weep when the hogs are slaughtered. I'm not strong enough to bear and lose. My fine big girl, that's Father, and he taught me the work of the forge. And even Robin admits that there's no one better to quiet a horse. I lay my big hands on them, and I feel them trembling. I know how they feel. They're big like me, big and timid. So I breathe my sweet peace to them, not with my lips, but through my fingers. And they hear me, not with their ears, but through their skins. The others went to Maying, and I stayed behind, spinning in the sunshine. The morn was clear as glass, and I was happy as a singing bird. And then he came, leading his horse, the horse limping, his head down. As fine a horse as I've ever seen, a fine gray palfrey, a wondrous horse. But I was staring at the boy. He had brown hair, not golden like the knights in story, and his eyes were dark as rivers. The Gloria was his face, the shape of it. I don't have words. He wore a blue cloak, bluer than the sky, and in the clasp was a sprig of white hawthorn. He'd been a Maying, and how I hated her, the girl he might have kissed. I was ashamed to be caught staring, but I put my hands on the palfrey, and he gentled as they always do. I ran my hand down the lame leg. I picked up the hoof and saw a stone caught between hoof and shoe, a grievous thing. Is your father in? His voice was like his face, proud and courteous. My palms were sweating. I can ease him. So I led the horse to the forge, and the master followed. I could tell right away he loved his horse. I don't know what he thought, that a maid should know how to shoe a horse. He may have been startled. I daren't look. I set to work, and my hands were steady. All the time I was fishing for something to say, a fine morning, or even, what's your name? But I knew who he was. He was Sir Stephen's nephew. Hugo, they call him. He hunted in these woods, and he killed a wild boar. I never did speak. I thought if I opened my mouth, he'd know my whole heart. When I finished, I wiped my hands on my apron, and he held a coin, a farthing. I was set and bold. I reached out my hand, and I shoved it away. And then touching him was what did it. My face got hot. I could almost hear Robin. Taggett's blushing. Look at Taggett. Taggett's red. I turned and ran back to the house. I crouched down with my back to the door. I hid my face in my hands. I don't know why or for how long. Afterwards, I went outside back to the forge. He was gone by then, long gone, and it seems a long life. I may live 50 years and not see him again, not close, not to speak to. There's a good smith up at the castle. Thinking that, I bent my head and saw, lying on the anvil, a miracle. That sprig of hawthorn from his cloak, on the anvil. If it were on the ground, it might only have fallen, but it was on the anvil. I picked it up as if it was holy. I couldn't stop smiling. Hugo left it for me. Taggart's got a crush on the Lord's nephew who killed the boar. What is the job that she did? You know? Did you recognize it? Anyone identify the things that I'm wearing that have to do with this job? Well, here's my necklace. It's a horseshoe, a miniature one. And I've also got kind of a unique ring on. Did you see that, students? I got this when I visited the blacksmith shop in Nauvoo. It's a nail, but it's been shaped into the shape of a ring. It's called a prairie diamond. Or that's what the pioneers would call it. They didn't have money to buy real rings. So Taggart's a blacksmith. Again, another important job during the medieval time period. Thanks for sharing these stories with me, students. They teach us, they give us a glimpse into what life would have been like. Taggart says she's big and ugly, still has crushes, okay? Even though they lived hundreds and hundreds and 1,000 years ago, they still had the same kind of experiences that we did. One sad part of the medieval time period that's mentioned in that story is how, you know, Taggart would never get married. Her mom says that's for the best because you won't have to bear children and see them die. And lots of children died during this time period because of lack of sanitation, lack of medical care, lack of so many things, right? That was a big problem. So, yeah, so sad, a sad period of time. Thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next tomorrow. See you then.